Very good afternoon to you all, and it's a pleasure to be on TEDx. The topic for today is, it's always the heavy one in the middle of the afternoon. It's about the role, the evolving role of women in the industry, and by that I assume it's the film industry in India, which of course is the showpiece and the platform by which I suppose the visibility of women is at its most prominent. However, movies reflect the society we live in. They reflect the tastes of the society we live in, the kind of things that the public likes. So I think that to talk about the role of women in the industry and how it's evolved or hasn't evolved or is evolving, we've got to go back to see the role of women in society, their rights, the kind of progress they've made over the years in different societies. I mean, it's shocking that women in America got their voting rights so late. I mean, it was quite remarkable that they got it so late. And when I look at European societies and women, I find that they were given their rights and things only after situations like the World Wars, where the participation of women was so strong. Until then, in the Victorian age, you found women, at least what I've seen, you found women, they dressed up well, they socialized, it was very genteel kind of thing, and women were expected to be in the background and produce babies. End of story. And they were supposed to be the ladies of the house, they were supposed to run the house. That was their department. In Titanic, the movie Titanic, that guy says a wonderful line when she's about to jump off the ship, and when they catch it, he says, "Women and machines don't work together. Women and machines are never compatible." It just gave you an idea of in the 1919s, the place that women were given and the kind of place they occupied. They weren't supposed to be dealing with machines or the Industrial Revolution or anything. They were supposed to be, like I said, stay at home, look after your house, look after your children, have babies. However, I am under the impression that India, this part of the world in the early days, before the British came and before we got influenced by the Victorian era and before the evangelists came, Indian society, if you look at Mohenjo-daro and Harappa and the Gupta age and the Maurya age, women in this part of the world were way more liberated, way more liberated. I mean, just by going through the evidence that history has produced, you can say that, I'm quite confident that I'm on the right lines as far as that's concerned, because in this part of the world, it was far more liberal for women in every way. I mean, there could never have been in the West anything close to the Khajuraho, sculptures of the Kama Sutra, for example, where the participation of women in the lovemaking and things. So it showed that there was a lot of liberation. I mean, they were equal. I mean, the kind of depiction that is in Khajuraho. I'm bringing that up because that is actually it symbolizes that the women were liberated, and that forms of love, as we call them, sex, were not considered they were not considered taboo. They were not considered bad. They were looked at from a far more liberal point of view as actually a kind of an art. I mean, as and a necessity that I suppose women and men both needed for happy marriages and a happy, generally a happy society, where these things were important. I'm just trying to draw a contrast. Then came the rule of the Victorians over India, and everything started getting a little more like Europe. I mean, the women suddenly started covering themselves more. Their roles were more defined as the Westerners saw it. So Indian women also began to take that background from where they were into a more subservient kind of, on the face of it, in society, subservient, There weren't the opportunities. On top of that, you know, we were being ruled by another power, by the British. So in any case, there was suppression for not only women, but for men as well. Then you have that whole period that goes by, comes 1947, and Hindi movies begin. We begin to become, the sort of indigenous kind of producers of entertainment, which is our entertainment after 1947's movies. And there begins the process, at least in Indian movies, where actually we gave, not often, but there are instances of women getting very prominent roles, and since we're pretty much a matriarchal society, there has evidence of women doing very strong roles, like Mother India, Jhansi Ki Rani. There was the leading lady who was Hunter Rani, and used to play lead roles, and the very famous actresses Ruby. I'm forgetting her name. I'm so sorry, but she was a leading lady, and she did action movies in the early 30s and 40s in Indian cinema. So I mean, and then of course came the absolute conservative era, where I think women were just in as far as the movies were concerned, they were the world over, not just in India. I mean, there were showpieces, they had to look good, and in Indian movies they had to dance, and they had to be wooed by the guy, but they really didn't have anything, as we say, like substantial in terms of something you can, you know, sort of put your teeth into kind of thing, which was happening in Hollywood as well. I mean, in Hollywood it's even more, it's even more merciless than it's here. Because I mean, there, after a certain age, there are no roles written for women, which is improving, of course. But, so women have had to fight for it. Also, it is the way society perceives their entertainment. More people are accepting now, even in the denomination of the audience that actually is conservative, even if you go to certain parts of India or certain parts of America. It's not that all of America is liberal. Certain parts of America, they don't accept women in the lead roles. In certain parts of America and the world, they do. They do in India. So, I mean, we've had our characters like Umrao Jan. We've had so many marvelous, and more recently, Jhansi Ki Rani, like I said, and all the repeats of all the women who have contributed, and so many other women in normal life who have contributed so much and have had such remarkable stories that are now being told. So I think there has been quite a big change, but not enough. And I also feel that, I think we are coming out of that. I think we're coming out of that kind of umbrella, or that kind of era of the British and the Europeans defining what feminism is and who women are in this country. I think we're coming out of that slowly, because it's still sort of governed on an international level, but it's getting much better. And I would be very happy for the day that we actually come back to the time when women were they were far more liberated. There was far more acceptance. There was no question of that women can't do this or women can't do that. I feel that's all come much later. But to talk about how they've involved in the Indian film industry, I suppose now is a really good time with OTT platforms and with different forms, different ways of how we watch our entertainment, not necessarily on the single screen. I think it's getting better. I see on OTT platforms, you take a series like Arya, in which Shushmita plays the lead. There are other aspects in the story also where women's parts are very strong, and this also is sort of it's sort of symptomatic with the fact that when there was a single screen format, you had to stick to the formula because that's all there was. With OTT and television, there are so many more stories you can tell, so many more stories that have can be told in a different way and can be accepted in a different way. And therefore, I feel the parts, the kind of involvement for women now, I think is the best it's ever been that I have seen in my 45 years of being in the Hindi films and sort of associated sort of stuff here and there. I think from what I see, it's like the best time ever that I have witnessed. However, when I speak to my colleagues who are women who I work with all the time, they're not very happy about it. They say there's still not enough, and I tend to agree with them. But then it's the same with actors as well. I mean, for male actors also. I mean, there aren't that many roles that are so fantastic, that are so sort of out of the ordinary or are exceptional. That is a problem with this field we work in called cinema. It's restrictive. It's not like you're a painter or a singer. In a singer, you have your sargam, you have your alap, you can go anywhere with the sargam, you can create. In cinema, there are restrictions. You can create, I'm not saying that you can't, but there are restrictions for characters and this, and of course, there's the cliche of typecasting. So when it's an expensive medium and you have to recover your money, so mostly people go with a tried and tested actor or actress is no such word, female actor who is proven in that particular kind of, role. So that's on both sides. Men get it. It's difficult for men as it is for women. I mean, people want to see you in what you are successful. Certainly producers want to hire you in what you are successful. So from that point of view, it's as tough for men as it is for women. But I would like to see much more happening. And I mean, let's take this for example. There's two of you, there's two women. I mean, that's the thing I've noticed a lot in the cinema industry. That apart from what comes on the screen, there are so many women, thankfully, today involved in all parts of the film industry. There's two of you, the two girls. Well, I mean, 20, 15 years ago, there have been 5 guys who would have come to shoot this. Now there are 2 lovely ladies sitting here, which also is very inspiring. But there are women now in the sound department, in the camera department, in the editing department, you name it. And backstage in a film when we're shooting, the crew, I see so many more women involved doing absolutely fantastic jobs and doing, mainstream filmmaking jobs like, sound and technical jobs. So what that guy said on the Titanic, that women and machines don't mix, it's just prejudice, and it's a bias, and it's turned topsy-turvy because I see in the film industry, at least I see women in the corporate world as well. I mean, there are just, it's becoming a playing field which has really, I mean, I've seen it change in under my nose and in front of my eyes over the past 40, 45 years, 40 years. I've seen it change, and it's welcome. It's a good thing. I mean, I welcome the change. I mean, I think women and men should work together and be able to have a good understanding and an acceptability and be a combined workforce. But if you come back to what screen image is, then that is sort of it's pretty much what society sees around them. There are a lot of women leaders today. There are women in the Indian Air Force. And they're pilots and they're fighter pilots. So I mean, women have broken so many barriers, so-called, restrictive barriers in real life. And those are the stories that will begin to be told. Without a doubt, there will be stories about a woman fighter pilot. Otherwise, there was Top Gun. You have Tom Cruise who's the pilot. Now there are women in all sorts of fields. There are women in the Navy. There are women everywhere. So there are going to be more stories that evolve, and that is how the face of cinema vis-a-vis women will change. Because, I mean, you have to have the stories for them, and that will come through real life and what society is going through. And I think it looks pretty bright from that point of view, because every time I open the papers or something, I see, women are being talked about breaking barriers and sort of doing all sorts of wonderful things. So, उनकी कहानी भी बताई जाएगी ना स्क्रीन पे. So I mean, I think that is where we are, and that's my personal point of view. I mean, I stand corrected if you think I'm talking off my rocker. That's your opinion, but that's what I feel. I mean, I feel there has been quite a lot of progress, but more to come. Thank you.